The Innovators Network.
This is Killer Innovations, a show about ideas, creativity, and how you can innovate. Welcome to the Innovators Garage, where you learn to create your next game-changing killer innovation.
So welcome to Killer Innovations. How are you doing this week? It's been a crazy week around here. We've been a lot of stuff going on. We've got some interesting announcements that'll be coming up starting soon with the show, and so you're not going to want to miss that. So make sure you subscribe, whether you're watching this on YouTube, hit that subscribe button, or you're listening to this on the audio podcast. Make sure you're a regular subscriber. So over on iTunes or Google or iHeart or Spotify. We've been around for 16 years. Yes, we are the longest continually produced show in podcast history. So you can find us pretty much everywhere. So make sure you subscribe so you don't miss any of the upcoming shows. So this week, we're going back and actually looking at an old show. In some cases, a really old show from the past. Some people found the old show, and I started getting some questions about it because it is a tad bit dated. And it's a show that I actually did back in February of 2012. So it's over 8 years old. And it was some work that we did around talking about innovation metrics. So what are the different metrics you can use to know whether you're good, bad, or indifferent when it comes to your activities on your team or within your organization. And so I wrote this back in 2012 because I was getting a lot of questions about what were the metrics I was using at HP. And there's actually a much older show, even beyond 2012, that talked about metrics, and it needed to be updated in 2012. And now, 8 years later, time to update this again. There's some new metrics that you want to consider, but also it's key at this point to also talk about, what is it that is important to your organization, right? So be a little careful about just taking somebody else's metrics and dropping them in. You've heard this from me 1,000 times about adapt and adopt. Adapt whatever makes sense that other people are doing that's got some kind of proven track record, and then bring it into your organization and then test it. Try it out. Doesn't mean that it's always going to work. So today we're going to talk about innovation metrics that every organization should use. I am trying to boil this down to the core set of metrics. This isn't the exhaustive list, but this is just, think of it as a starter list of the innovation metrics. Now, everyone that's on this list are ones that I have actually used. I'm not recommending you something that I've read about. I've actually led organizations when I was CTO at HP. HP's total R&D spend was a little bit north of $4 billion. So these metrics have been tested and proven, all the way from that down to my current organization, which is 200 researchers, down to startups. So this is a core set that you can apply no matter what size organization. Now, if you're a government agency or a charity, you may need to tweak these a little bit, because we're going to talk about some financial objectives that typical for-profit organizations are going to focus in on. Okay? Now, however, before we get started, I do want to address one thing, and that is bad metric. There are a lot of bad metrics that are out there. Some of them are very prevalent. Some of them are extremely popular, particularly on Wall Street. If you work for a publicly traded, meaning you have shares on a stock exchange like the New York Stock Exchange or NASDAQ or wherever around the world, some of these metrics get defined by analysts. These are not people who've actually run innovation. In many cases, they've never even run a business. Sorry if you're an analyst and you're offended by that, but it's the truth, right? It's part of my little, um, angst with analysts trying to tell business leaders how to run their business. So let's talk about one bad metric that just absolutely lights my hair on fire. And that is R&D revenue spent on R&D, or revenue, percentage of revenue spent on R&D. So this is a percentage of revenue spent on R&D, right? This is the most popular metric that Wall Street has, and they try to rank organizations based on this metric. Now, what I will tell you, and I've done the analysis myself, I've run tests and trials, I have collected data from public companies, I have talked to chief innovation officers, I've coached, mentored, and advised CEOs and chief innovation officers around the world in a wide range of industries. This is an absolutely bogus metric. It is not predictive of future success. Yet for some reason, we get wound up on this metric, right? We compare, but it is not indicative of having any kind of prediction. So if this was truly a good metric, then if I spent 50% of my revenue on R&D, I should be 2 times better than somebody that only spends 25% of their revenue on R&D. That is not the case. It varies by industry, it varies by even company, right? If you looked at the mobile phone business and you compared Apple to anybody else, take a BlackBerry, there's no correlation relative to this spend. Now, I will tell you that all of my years at HP as an officer, executive of the corporation, I spent a lot of time trying to, and ultimately made some progress on convincing the board of directors at HP that this metric was bogus and should not be a metric that that should be used. Now, if you're interested, you can go over to philmckinney.com. I wrote a blog post a while ago, probably a year, maybe even 2 years ago, about the perils of metrics and my experience with Mark Hurd, who was the CEO for HP at the time, who was big into metrics. So if you're interested in really getting into behind the scenes on what was going on at HP and metrics, that would be my suggested starting point. It's a blog post. You can find it over at philmckinney.com. Now that I've got this over, and this is a metric I just absolutely do not like, what are good metrics? How do you define good metrics? Well, good metrics fall into different categories, and you have to make sure you understand where the metric you're going to apply and what is it that you're actually looking at relative to the overall process. So the way I think about this is to look at it from the standpoint of input, output, outcome, and impact. And be quite honest, the two that I spend, the majority of my time at is around input and impact. Input, what do you put at the top of the funnel? Impact is what you have out at the bottom, the impact to your organization, the impact to your team. Now, a lot of people want to put a metric in on output or outcomes. those are false flags. When it comes to innovation, you want to look at input and then you want to look at the impact. What is the impact that your innovation effort is having? What are the impacts that are important to your organization? So if you understand what that impact that you're trying to drive, whether it's customer satisfaction, NPS scores, whatever, then you back up and say, what inputs can I invest in that will move the needle on that impact? So a lot of people get tied up in output measurements of innovation processes and funnels. Some of that's important, but it's really about impact. So input and impact. And that's what we're going to look at today. I'm going to break down the suggested innovation metrics on the input side and how do you measure impact. Some of those key things that you can measure the impact on. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this quick commercial break. You're listening to Killer Innovations. Well, welcome back to Killer Innovations. We're continuing our conversation talking about innovation metrics and how you should think about that. And what I'm sharing with you is really kind of the core list of innovation metrics that every organization should look at applying. Now, again, these metrics tend to be swing more towards for-profit organizations. So if you are leading efforts in a government agency, for instance, or a non-for-profit charity, or some other kind of organization that doesn't really think about your business in the context of profit and loss, you may want to tweak some of these. But they would give you some core foundation. And again, all of these metrics that I'm sharing with you are ones that I have actually used over my 25 plus year career leading innovation with startup organizations to the largest technology company in the world. So, and everything in between. So, what are we going to talk about right now is what I'm calling the innovation input metrics. What are those innovation input metrics that you should consider having as part of your measurement of success? So, first one up is the number of new ideas in the funnel. Now, is a bigger number better? Not always the case, but the way I use this metric, what I have used it, and even how I use it today, is to make sure that we continue to keep the funnel full. New organizations putting in place new innovation frameworks tend to get really excited. They get this big burst of ideas. They run through those. They get a couple of them that look really good. They kind of punch those out. They ring the bell. They look over their shoulders and the funnel's empty. Then there's this big gap because now they got to go back and refill the funnel. This metric, it's not so much about what the number is. Set it to be whatever you think the number should be, but it's about keeping the organization focused that the funnel needs to be fed. You need to be continuously coming up with and developing new ideas. Now, we look at this on a quarterly basis, and then in my current organizations, twice a year, we sit down and we actually look at everything that's in the funnel and how many items are in each of the 4 funnels. Now, if you're not familiar with the funnel and how the funnel management process works, you can go back and listen to some previous shows. You can search for it at Killer Innovations in the Fire Framework series that we just wrapped up. You can look at it in the ranking and execution 2 shows. I talk about the funnels in both of those shows for ranking and execution. So go back and search for those. So number of new ideas in the funnel. Now, if you set it to be like an unreasonable one, like you want 500 ideas every quarter, that even a large organization, that's hard to do. If you set it too low where you just want 2 ideas, then you're banking that some of those ideas are going to be almost guaranteed grand slams, and that's just not something you want to bet on. So you want to find a number that makes sense for the size of your organization and what can you reasonably put in? You don't want it to be 0 or 2 or 3, maybe 5, 10 to start out with, and then see where that plays out as you go through the rest of your funnel. So, but this is an important metric. Next is the acceptance, or what I refer to as the idea kill rate. Acceptance is of those ideas that get thrown in to your through your to the top of your funnel. How many of them actually make it through to get funding? Meaning you looked at them, you evaluated them, you said they were good, now you're going to fund it. You know, if that acceptance rate is high, like 50 or 75%, then either you've set the bar too low or you're pre-screening all of the ideas out and you're only going with sure things. So you want that acceptance rate to kind of, it could be anywhere from 10% to about 30%. Get above 30%, then that's a flag that says I got to look at my my funnel. The other flip side is the kill rate. When do you kill an idea? Even though you may have funded it and you started it, not all ideas are great ideas. So what is your kill rate? What's the ratio of ideas? Now, back in my HP days, we had a 4-phase funnel. It was a stage gate approach to managing ideas from the very beginning until they turned into a product and on the shelf and customers could buy it. And we typically looked at about a 50% kill rate between each phase. So if I had 10 ideas in the first phase, I would assume I'd be 5 in the second phase. I'd be down to 2 or 3 in the third phase, and I would have 1 success. So start off with 10, get 1 out the door. And that's kind of, a really good way to think about that funnel. Start with 10, go to 5, go to 2 or 3, ship 1. That tells you that you're trying enough different things and you're really trying to push the envelope on what it is that you want to put out there. Okay? So take a look at your acceptance and look at your idea kill rate. Now, what I'm doing with these metrics, I'm not giving you the exact numbers because it's going to vary. But you need to take a look at what your current acceptance and kill rate is, and then you may set a target. And you may want to put it into your OKRs, the objectives and key results for your team. So on a quarterly basis, they're getting measured on their OKRs as to what their acceptance or kill rate is. If you're not familiar with OKRs, go over and Google it. And I've actually done a show on how I use OKRs to drive innovation teams. So you can go search over Killer Innovations for OKRs. Third, balanced investment. What is your metric for how you're going to use your innovation spend to influence your organization? This is the balanced innovation investment model that I established at HP, have used it for decades. It works very, very well. And the way it works is across the bottoms are your products and services, existing ones and new ones. Vertical is your customers or the markets you serve, existing markets to new markets. 70% of the innovation spend should be in the core, about 70%. 20% across the 2 adjacencies. Adjacencies meaning new products to existing customers or existing products to new customers, right? So you can, that's about 20%. And then 10% in the truly new customers, new markets, new products, new technologies, new everything. So 70, 20, 10 is best in class. If you can balance your investment spend on your portfolio in the 70, 20, 10, you are best in class. And that should be your target. Now, not everybody gets there and it varies from time to time, but a balanced investment is absolutely important. So with that, we're going to take another quick commercial break and continue our conversation. Welcome back to Killer Innovations as we continue our conversation around innovation metrics. and how to use those within your organization. I'm sharing today with you what I think are the core set of metrics that every organization should take a hard look at and see how to apply them to your own innovation efforts. Now, this is not the exhaustive list. There are literally 30, 40, 50 metrics you could use. You would drive yourself crazy, but you could use them. This is just the core set. We just wrapped up talking about the input metrics that measure input coming into your innovation efforts. And that includes ideas being generated, includes funding, etc. What we want to talk about now is impact metrics. What are those innovation impact metrics? So this is not just the output or outcomes. This is impact. How does it impact ultimately the target that you have for your organization? That could be your customers, it could be final financial results, whatever it is. So this is impact metrics that we're going to talk about now. First one is what I call the 3M metric. This one is extremely popular, and that is the percentage of revenue from new products. Refine that a little bit. 3M actually has an innovation metric that they've tracked for decades and decades, which is what percentage of their revenue comes from products introduced in the last 3 years. So what this does is it forces 3M to constantly be coming out with new things, right? So don't let a product become kind of overly dominant as being the bulk of their revenue streams. And so again, percentage of revenue from new products. In the case of 3M, they use 3 years as kind of the timing for this. So take a look at this, think about it, and go take a look at your own products. Now, 3M, in some cases, the question is okay, does Post-it notes count? Or if they come up with a new type of Post-it note, does that count as new? Well, it does count as new. I mean, for instance, they had Post-it notes and they came up with different colors. They didn't count that. But I remember when they took the concept of Post-it notes and first applied it to flip chart paper. Man, it was an unbelievable value to me running innovation workshops now because I can take and write things on a flip chart, peel it off, and stick it to a wall or stick it to a glass window in a conference room. Huge, huge value. That was new. That was applying a technology into an entirely new market. It wasn't Post-it notes. It was about flip chart paper, different use case. That counted. So think about what percentage of your revenue comes from recent products of yours, and is that a high enough number? And set a target for yourself. Set a target for your CTO. Set a target for your chief innovation officer. Set a target for your sales team to get them out there to push those new products. Another outcome is that metric that many organizations would look at, and this is particularly valuable in the high-tech world, and that is the quality of your patents. This is different than what some CEOs get hung up on is the quantity of patents. When I first went to HP, Carly Fiorina was the CEO, and Carly would just pound on us to ramp up the number of patents. If you recall, and it still happens today, corporations get ranked by the number of patents that they've been awarded. Top of the list, and has been for many, 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 many years up there. If they're not number one, they've always been the top 3 or 4, has been IBM. Now, IBM's R&D spend is significantly higher than a lot of organizations. I haven't looked at it, quite honestly, in the last 5 to 8 years, so I don't know what that number is for them anymore. But Carly's push was, I want HP to have as many patents as possible because I want to get up on that list, and I want to, that's how the market views us as being innovative. And I would argue in saying, no, that is not how You get it? Because you can get a patent for almost anything. I could write a patent that I'm almost positive would be awarded, but it's, it's just bogus. It's just, I could write a patent, but it'd be totally meaningless. It has no value. So what we shifted at HP to, and what I encourage all organizations to look at now, is what's called quality of patents. Now, how do you measure the quality of patents? Well, the biggest and easiest way to do that is what's called the CHI index. Now, at least it used to be called the CHI index. I did a recent search on it, and I'm kind of lost trying to connect back to the original source of where the concept came up. But yeah, I'll describe to you how it worked. The way it worked is they would look at all your patents. Then they would look at across your industry all other patents that reference them. So when you apply for a patent, one of the key things you have to do is you have to identify prior art, foundational work that either you're building upon or has led to the innovation work that you're doing. And so if you create a very important, high impact patent, you will have a large number of other patents that are referring to your patent. So the more times your patent gets referenced, the higher its value. Rather than you just do a patent and nobody looks at it, nobody cares, it doesn't get referenced, it's not listed as prior art, low value. And so you can measure the impact or the quality of your patents by how many other patents refer to it, actually point to your work as having laid a foundation, having been fundamental to create new opportunities, new ideas, new technologies, new science, whatever it is. So it's not just about the quantity of patents, which again, it qualifies into, the quantity equals a bogus metric. Quality of patents is an outcome metric. It's something that, and this is if patents are important to you, it should be one that you look at. But again, you want to look at it from a quality perspective. And then the third here is innovation impact on gross margin. This is actually the metric I got HP to take on as the proper metric rather than the percentage of revenue spent on R&D. Now, the way we did this is gross margin impact for every dollar of R&D spent. So if I spent $1 on R&D, what was the impact on gross margin? Why is this an important metric? Well, the reason why I am a big fan of this metric is because if you do good innovation, if you come up with a just absolutely brilliant product or service, your customers, the people who buy whatever it is, this great idea is you have, they will reward you with a margin premium. They will pay a disproportionate higher margin correlating to the impact and value that they see for your idea. So the bigger wow, the bigger that margin impact is going to be. Go back and look at the iPhone and see what that margin premium that Apple was able to secure by doing phenomenal innovation. So this is the metric that ultimately says that for every dollar that you're spending on innovation, what is that margin impact going to be? Now, it isn't a metric that says as I can spend more, I can drive more margin, because it's tied to the decision impact. This is a metric that you just can't turn on overnight. This is a metric that takes some time. You got to lay some foundation, because it's the dollars you spent in the case of, let's say, laptop computers. I spent those dollars 2-3 years ago, and the margin I'm measuring today is the result of that. So the decision I made 3 years ago, I'm seeing the result of that. So you have to have good historical data to use this metric. And I spent years building up that history to use this metric. Great insight. It also helps point out leaders and processes and that allow you to make better decisions on which innovation projects you should fund that are going to give you the biggest bang, the biggest impact on your gross margin. So this one's a heavy lift, but worth the effort. So don't go anywhere. We're going to be right back after this quick break to continue our conversation on metrics. Welcome back to Killer Innovations as we continue our conversation on the innovation metrics every organization should look into using. If you're trying to run your innovation effort and you have no innovation metrics defined, then you're basically driving the car with no headlights and you've blacked out your windshield. You kind of have to know where you're going. You have to be able to see in front of you and be able to steer your decision making, your investment levels, in order to have the best impact from all of this work and all this effort you're putting in to creating better ideas, more innovations. So today we've been talking about the 6 innovation metrics that every organization should use. And we're going to run through these again just to make sure we've all, got on top of mind. So what are these 6 innovation metrics? Well, we talked about 3 input metrics. One was the number of new ideas in the funnel. How many ideas do you have coming into the funnel? You have to keep the funnel flowing. You need to keep putting in newer and more ideas. 2, what's the acceptance or the kill rate? How many of those ideas that go into the funnel do you actually decide to go forward? If that number is too high, if you're 70, 80, 90%, then either you've got a problem in your funnel or the criteria you're using to say go fund them is way too low. You need to raise that bar, raise the quality. Same thing on the kill rate. If you're not killing off ideas, you're going to find that your funnel gets clogged. You got so much stuff in there. You've got no money and no time, no people and time to actually do any work because there's so much stuff that just kind of like clogging up the pipe here. So what is your kill rate? Number 3, the balanced innovation investment. How close are you to the 70-20-10? Now, I'll let you a little insight. When I first got to HP, I sat down and did the analysis, kind of follow the money. And when I got to HP was 98-2. It was 98% in the core, 2% in adjacencies, and nothing really in what I would call the new category. In over 3 years, we went from 98-2 to 70-20-10 without increasing the budget. Budget was $4 billion. At the beginning, it was $4 billion 3 years later. And we went from 98-2 to 70-20-10. So what is your balanced innovation investment? And how do you migrate from where you are today to getting yourself to 70-20-10? And it's not asking for more dollars because your CFO is not going to buy that story, let me tell you. Impact metrics. How do you measure the impact on the other end? Well, one is percentage of revenue from new products. This is the 3M metric. Take a look at it. It's a really interesting metric. It kind of gets everybody focused on the new things. You put that metric as a target for your sales force, for your R&D teams. You get people aligned on we want new ideas that are going to generate and have revenue impact. 2, quality of the patents, not number of patents. Don't fall into the Carly Fiorina trap of thinking quantity will raise the impression of the innovation effort going on inside your organization. It's not quantity, it's quality of patents. And then number 3, the innovation impact on gross margin. That's probably the best correlated metric for you to understand the decision making that you made to ultimately the gross margin impact. The problem is there's a time lag in there. Like I said in the previous segment, for laptops, that's about 2 years, 3 years. Same thing for mobile phones. Displays, a little bit less. You could do that in about a year. big, complex IT server systems, you could be 4 years, 5 years, right? From decision making to, to the gross margin impact. So you got to think about that lag time. That has a huge, huge impact. So again, take a look at these 6 innovation metrics and think about how you can apply these. Now, if you are a government agency or you're a charity organization, tweak these, come up with your own metrics. But what you want to focus on is the input metrics, what coming in at the beginning, at the front end to impact. And think about the impact, whether it's at a customer, if you're a charity, it's a donor, if it is, if you're a government agency, maybe it's a measurement of efficiency improvement or savings, reducing the burden on the tax dollars, whatever it is. But think about it in the context of input metrics to impact metrics. If you want to learn more about metrics and how to think about them within your organization, take a look at the Disruptive Ideation Workshop. This is a workshop that the Innovators Network comes. They come on, historically, they would come on site. Now it's done virtually. But this is a one-day kind of cram it all down into a really tight package. It teaches you the framework, the focus, ideation, ranking, and execution. It focuses on ranking and execution. It does address things like funnel and funnel management at a very high level. But that's the foundation. This Disruptive Ideation Workshop lays the foundation. It's step one towards the process of you creating a well-run, well-established innovation framework. But the key out of this workshop, out of the most innovation workshops where you sit around and people flash a bunch of slides on theory, is this workshop is built around a problem statement you define. Whatever area of ideas that you want to drive for your organization, and the entire workshop is tailored to your problem statement, and then that is used to drive the entire experience. So not only does you and your team learn the framework, but you actually walk out with ideas that you can use. If you want more information, drop me a note, fill it at killerinnovations.com, or text the word innovation to 44222. You can also send an email to innovation@killerinnovations.com. And with that, we're going to wrap up today's show. Thank you for your time. Don't go anywhere. We'll be here next week. Subscribe, and you won't miss a great show. Talk to you soon.
This show is distributed by the Innovators Network. For more information and other great shows and content, visit theinnovators.network.